What is going on, everyone? The Final Four is set. That's right, we went through the round of 64, the round of 32. The Sweet 16 was great, but the Elite 8 was even sweeter. They were unbelievable games, one of the best Elite 8s that I can remember. And we have 4 basketball teams left, 4 squads ready to battle it out for a chance to win a national championship. Wow, and some great storylines, may I add. So one matchup we have is Auburn, a team that has never been to the Final Four, against Virginia, who had the most historic upset loss in the NCAA tournament history. So what a storyline between those two teams. And on top of that, we have Michigan State, who just took down Duke, took down Zion, RJ Barrett, this freshman squad that was almost unguardable. They find a way to beat that team, and they will go up against a Texas Tech squad that is never been to the Final Four either. A team that you say, really, Texas Tech? It doesn't even sound right coming out of my mouth. That's not an organization, a franchise that you would put together with college basketball and the NCAA tournament's Final Four. Now, kudos to them. They had a fantastic ride. I'm not knocking them. But it's not a team you normally hear. That's why I love the storyline of this Final Four. 2 of the 4 teams have never been there. Virginia had one of the most historic upsets ever, and on the losing side of that. And Michigan State takes down a Duke team that no one thought would ever lose. These 4 teams left have literally miraculous stories, and let's dive into them just a little bit deeper. So we'll go into this Auburn-Virginia matchup first. Auburn, they take down Kentucky in overtime in the Elite 8. They have their 2 players who were just absolutely outstanding with Bryce Brown and Jared Harper. Harper has 26. Brown goes off for 24. They were just literally dynamic. Their speed, the way they were knocking down shots. And Kentucky, they kind of adjusted in the second half. They went to P.J. Washington, who was being a legitimate force, and he was being their go-to guy. But Auburn, with just the willpower and the way that they did not stop fighting. Kentucky had chances to kind of take this game away, but Auburn continuing to push and battle, well coached, and they even made some mistakes down the stretch with turning the ball over because they were playing too fast and miscommunications on cut to the basket, but they still found a way to grind it out in overtime to beat a Coach Cal squad that I thought was very solid, a very solid team, and I didn't think their youth beat them. That's what everyone would talk about with Kentucky. Oh, their youth was the problem. I didn't even think it was that. I thought Auburn just came out and 2 players, their top 2 dogs, took it and had more fire under them. That's what I saw out of that Auburn team as they make it to the Final Four for the first time. And what a great team. The way they play, the pace they play at, unbelievable talent, for real, unbelievable talent. And they will go up against Virginia, right? Oh, by the way, Texas Tech in the Sweet 16, they took down a Michigan team. And that Michigan team, when they play their game, they are good. But they are known to kind of have a stinker. And I'm not saying Auburn didn't make them have a stinker, because they did. They played them really hard. And they beat a good Michigan team. I also think Michigan didn't help themselves either in that game, and that's how I saw the Sweet 16 matchup. But they took care of business against Kentucky. That's for damn sure. So Virginia, in the Sweet 16, they beat out an Oregon team in an ugly win. It wasn't a pretty basketball game, but it was very competitive, very low scoring. The score was 53-49. That Oregon team, I bashed Pac-12 basketball all season long. They showed me a lot. Now, they didn't get the job done, but they showed me a lot. They played Virginia really hard, but Virginia escaped, and that's really all that matters. Survive and advance. We all know how it is in this tournament. It's survive and advance. So that was their Sweet 16 matchup. It wasn't a pretty win, but it was a good win. And then they take on Purdue in overtime, and this was ridiculous with Carson Edwards scoring 43 points, 42 points. He's been the Steph Curry of the tournament this year. He has been putting up points left and right. There was a buzzer beater that was needed to tie this game in regulation after a missed free throw that got tipped back to the backcourt. Oh my goodness, for this to go to overtime, it was absolutely nuts. You have Kyle Guy giving you 25 and 10, Jerome at 24, 7 and 5. The players on Virginia were legitimate ballers in that game, but all because of a huge huge missed free throw that gets tipped back. How do you not get that ball if you're Purdue? And wow, ridiculous. They hit a buzzer beater to tie it in overtime. They get what they needed. Carson Edwards was a phenomenal story this tournament, but that team did not have enough. This was after Purdue actually had a sick overtime win against Tennessee in a thriller. So they were coming off of one real high extreme of an emotional win in overtime to a really devastating loss in an emotional overtime game. And there were some ticky-tack calls down the stretch in this one, fourth quarter or second half. Fouls at the three-point line and all that. But that's part of this thing. The referees being ticky-tacky and whatnot and having some horrendous calls. That's part of the business. Virginia escapes. They get a win in overtime after needing a buzzer beater, and their two guys, Kyle Guy and Jerome, made some big-time plays, and this is after that emotional loss last season, that heartbreak last season to make it to the Final Four. There's something special in that bond, in that culture, and you have guys stepping up to the media and saying, listen, what we went through last year was probably the hardest moment in our entire lives, and to be where we are now, it is beautiful. And I like that storyline. So we will go into Texas Tech now. And like I said, this isn't a team where you see Texas Tech and you say, okay, this squad, this is college basketball. No, it's not. It's not a college basketball organization or school. It's just something that you don't really see. But the way they played Michigan in the Sweet 16, their defense, and even the way that they played Gonzaga with their defense, they held Gonzaga to less than 70 points. The only time that's ever happened in this season was 3 other times. Their defense, the way they made Gonzaga play and turn the ball over, that was the big thing. That was the factor in this basketball game, was making Gonzaga uncomfortable and forcing them to turn the ball over so many times. You have Perkins saying, I don't know what's going on here. What happened? We don't do this. This is not what we do. Well, Texas Tech made you play that way. They forced you to do that. Also with Perkins, he was clearly upset after the game. He had his hands out of bounds during an inbound play. He gets a technical late seconds into the game, which really hurt the team, as, you know, the Texas Tech Raiders end up getting a free throw, and then they get the ball back. So pretty devastating on Gonzaga's part. They had a really good team this year, but they ran into a tough team that plays with grit, and they're a long team, a physical team. It's going to be interesting to see how they match up against Michigan State, who just took down Duke. We complained before the tournament started. Second seed, and they're going to be in Duke's bracket? They're the second seed, and they're going to be in the number 1 overall bracket? That's tough. Tom Izzo, great game plan. The second half, Zion 8. But let's be real. You really can't stop him. You just have to make him have somewhat a little bit above average, reasonable numbers, if that makes sense. You're not going to stop Zion Williamson. In the second half, he was taking it hard to the rim. He was actually knocking down jump shots. And there were times where just his presence forced Michigan State to have to play him differently defensively, which opened up R.J. Barrett at the three-point line. Just his presence is so big. But I thought Tom Izzo had such a great game plan. And not only that, late in the game, crunch time, drawing up plays for guys like Goins to knock three-pointers down. He did a great job today, and that was one of the reasons why they won. On top of Cassius Winston having a double-double, he was unreal, and he is the reason why that team is playing the way that he is. This is on a ride of Tom Izzo getting backlash for the way that he treats his players, which I thought was ridiculous. Clearly, there is a special family feeling between anyone who's played for Tom Izzo and that organization. So I don't buy that. He's a hard, old-school coach, and that works in this league. You can see the way that he's hugging his players after such an emotional win, such a huge win to take down a team like Duke that no one thought could lose. It was really exciting to see. So, and this team beat LSU in the Sweet 16 pretty good. Now, LSU, I thought, was flawed just because of the head coach thing. You lose your head coach to NCAA violations. You have a new guy step in for a late run. There's only so far you can go, in my opinion. I was surprised that they went as far as they did, but they are a good athletic team. But Michigan State handled them business, just rolled right through them and took care of business against Duke. Zion went 24 and 14 in that game. So all around, Auburn versus Virginia, Texas Tech versus Michigan State, we have a chance to see two teams play each other in the national championship who have never been in the Final Four. Or we can have a possibility of Virginia versus Michigan State, which are two historic franchises and schools for college basketball. You can have one or the other, or you can have one of each, or whatever. But this is going to be an awesome Final Four. I'm very excited for it. Great teams, hot teams. Auburn with a great storyline. They might be my favorite storyline right now, but for some reason, I don't know why, I have a little, heart feeling for Tom Izzo and that squad, but I really don't care. It's not like I sit here and I root for anyone. I just watch the game, and my heart somehow starts leaning one way or the other. I have no emotional ties to either of these games or either of these teams. I just want to see how it goes. But I was watching that Auburn game, and I'm saying, damn, I like those two players, man. The way they play, it's phenomenal. Harper, Brown, unreal the way they play and the pace that they do. I watch Michigan State and I say, Winston, how can you hate that? How can you hate Tom Izzo? How can you hate that part of it? I look at Virginia and I say, how can you hate the fact that this team went through a devastating time last year? I look at Texas Tech and I say, how can you hate a team that nobody even thinks of as a college basketball team? Great storylines. Let me know your thoughts on the Sweet 16 games, the Elite 8 games, the Final Four matchups, these teams left. Let me know what you think about all of these games. See, Duke, I forgot to mention, Duke in the Sweet 16, they escaped. They escaped real super late. And they also escaped against UCF. There was so much going on with them escaping. It was bound to happen. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.